All right, good morning, everybody. We're going to be starting our live stream right away. I'm just waiting for our creators to join us. We're going to be talking about front end versus back end, which is so exciting. Hello, creator number one. We're going to invite some people to come join, which is very exciting. Welcome to people, which is very exciting. Welcome to people that are just jumping on. Hi, Ziad. How are you doing?
Hey, Olivia, doing pretty well. What about you?
Good. I'm doing very good. Busy day, like always. What are you working on today? Anything exciting?
Just doing, practicum, social media content creation, a little bit of software engineering work, and yeah, I'm hoping to be a productive day.
Right on. Hi, Dweez. How are you doing?
I'm good, same as yet.
Good. Good.
Content creation for practicum and not so much software engineering today.
Yes. Talking about back end versus front end today, which is so exciting. I know lots of people have been waiting for this conversation to happen. Welcome, Dom. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing really good. Yourself?
Good. I'm doing good. Awesome. Well, since we're all here, I'll do our little welcome spiel. So, welcome everybody to the live stream today. I'm Olivia. I'm our social media manager for Practicum. Today, we're going to be talking about front end versus back end versus full stack development, which is very exciting. I'm not very familiar on this topic, so I'm excited to learn a lot more about it. We do this every Wednesday at 12:30 EST. I'm pretty sure that's the time because it was just daylight savings time. So hopefully that's the same for everybody joining today. So yeah, we're just going to jump right into some questions and get started. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll be sure to get to them at the end. And we're really excited to get started. All right, first question. What is front end, back end, and full stack? What is different? What is similar? That's a big question. I'm going to chop it in half. We'll start with what is front end development. We'll start with Ziad. What is front end development?
Yeah, so when you're basically building anything as a software engineer, like you're building an app, you're building a website, or just like an application in general, the front end is usually what your users will actually see. So it's like the colors of things, the design of the website, different layouts. So for example, like on TikTok, the front end of TikTok is like the videos that are popping up, the little heart which lets you like videos, the share button, all that kind of stuff. So front end developers are usually like writing the code to make all that stuff actually appear on someone's phone. So yeah, that's my answer. What do you guys think?
Very cool. Does that basically sum it up? Like what front end is? I can jump into a different question for you.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I don't
Okay.
know. You guys have anything to add? Louise, Dom?
Yeah,
Uh,
so we go ahead, Dom.
okay, let me then go first. Yeah, I would also add that everything you see in browsers, that's front end development. So as the ad said, we like make all the colors. We make sure that everything works properly, that everything's optimized on that front, and we just get some data from the server, which is unformatted. For example, if you look at TikTok and all the posts from servers, you just get data. For example, it's called usually in JSON format, but you can imagine it like plain text, almost like that. And then you have, I don't know, video name, video URL, just random text, and we use those texts and convert them to everything you see in browsers. I would also add that sometimes people mix and love to think that's the same. That if somebody is a front end developer, that he can design a really good app, but those are completely different fields. And in true, like many front-end developers are not good at designing and will create a terrible application if they don't have proper designs from designers. So yeah, that's one side. Designers create those designs and front-end engineers convert those designs into beautiful applications. Without those beautiful designs, applications probably wouldn't be that beautiful, but they would be functional.
Very cool. Great explanation. Please, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, so it was a question. Am I allowed to ask questions?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, so to Dom, like you mentioned earlier that they are two completely different things, right? What would you say is the biggest difference between the two things? For example, with difference, I mean the difference between developing a front-end web page and an application.
Mm.
You mean I said it? Two different things are designing an application and building
Yeah. So like, what is the main thing? Like they differ. They're not the same thing, but how do I phrase it? Like what is the main difference between them? I would say.
Well, for designing, that's a process where designers usually paired up with project managers, sometimes with one developer or so. They do market research, they do user training sessions and everything, and then after all those discussions and researches, they create, how can I say, wireframes of applications, which is just something like a dummy application or just sketches of application in a tool called Figma. That's a popular tool for creating designs. And you can imagine it as screenshots of applications. So it looks something like that with all the details like margins, paddings, all the colors there. And then when you have those designs, then developers come into play. They look at those designs, and according to them, they build an application. They convert those Figma designs or Adobe XD designs into actual code and make it all interactive.
Thank
Right.
you.
Great explanation. Okay, Louise, I'm going to start with you for this next one. So, what is back end development? Probably just the opposite, but I want you to go into detail about it.
Yeah. So basically, you have the front end. That's what the user see. The back end is more about the information. It can be many different things. I will just name an example, the information of the user. That is more of the back end. So for example, the passwords, the usernames, the data that the users give to it's basically the data of the user. They're stored in the backend as the database, and all of these things are considered backend. There's many different things you can categorize the backend as, but if you look at the web page, the backend is what you as the user don't get to see,
Mm,
and the front end is what you see. That's why it's called the front and the back. Like you don't see the back end of things, you just see the front end. I'm pretty
cool.
sure that my explanation can be elaborated and gone in much more detail, but that's like a superficial explanation for it. Yeah.
Honestly, most simple explanations for things is like so clear because sometimes when people go into too much detail, I'm like, whoa, that was a lot of info. So I'm glad that you broke it down. Zia, do you have anything to add to like what backend is?
Yeah, the example I usually like to give when someone asks this is like when you think of any app, for example, when you're like first starting out in it, the first thing you usually see is like a login screen. It's like enter your username and password. So the front end would be like the actual boxes that like you're typing in, the button that says like login or sign up or whatever. But then the second you press like login, like once you've entered all your information and you press that actual button, then the back end kind of like takes over from there. It actually like is what is it's what's like doing all the logic and like checking if your username and password are right, and then like getting all of your account information. So in the case of Instagram, it's like once you press login, then you're taken to like your feed, your DMs, like all that kind of stuff. So the back end was like basically fetching all of that information and then giving it to the front end to display to you. So it's like the front end and back end are really always like working together. It's just one is responsible for showing the user stuff, and the other is responsible for executing all the logic and making sure that like users are logged in correctly and all that kind of stuff. Also,
Very,
super cool, the little turkey. I don't know if you guys saw that. Super awesome.
yeah, it's almost Thanksgiving in the States here, so very exciting. Getting in the mood for some turkey if that's what you're celebrating. So that's exciting. Dom, do you have anything else to add to that? What backend is?
Those were great explanations. I actually loved Ziad's example so much because I used the same example to explain it to people. So I won't just repeat it, but I would maybe add, maybe people are thinking, so why is not possible to have everything in the front, and why do you even need backend? And as both Ziad and Wiz said, that information is stored on the backend. So for example, let's say it's TikTok, and you have your posts, you have your comments, and you have all the data somewhere on the backend. That means that you can log in from every device, and you will still get the data. If everything there is stored on the front end on your phone, that means that when you lose your phone, everything will be gone. So it wouldn't make a lot of sense. It would also cause a lot of security issues and everything. So yeah, everything needs to be stored there, not just for that purpose that you can log in from different devices, but also for security, because then it's all stored on one place, and you cannot modify it. You cannot access backend.
Yeah, something I'd also like to
Yeah.
add, like, for example, when you have like a social media like Instagram or TikTok as an app, it doesn't really make any sense for like everybody in the world's Instagram accounts and their feeds and DMs and everything to be like on your phone. That like, you wouldn't want that. That's a ton of data. Uh, Also, like Dom said, it's like security issues and stuff like that. So instead, when like you're designing applications, the back end is really just like a bunch of computers like somewhere else, like in AWS and Google Cloud has like a ton of computers and data warehouses and stuff, and then your phone is just like getting what it needs. Like you, Olivia, when you log into your Instagram or your TikTok, you don't want like my Instagram or TikTok like on there. You want your feed, you want your messages, all that kind of stuff. So you just tell the back end like, okay, I'm Olivia. I want Olivia's information, and then it gives it to you, and that's all you need basically. So yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. I feel like we could totally get into a conversation about algorithms, but we'll save that for next time because that's always very curious. I'm sure, especially for people joining, they're probably like, how does the algorithm work? Awesome. Those are great explanations. Thank you guys so much. The last question, I guess, that ties all this together is what is full stack? Is it full stack development, full stack in general? Like, how do you even say it? Dom, we'll start with.
Yeah, so full stack is actually both front end and back end combined. Why is it called full stack? Because also like front end is kind of like that. You have that developer stack, which is whole application, that complete application. And when you combine like front end and back end, you get full stack. So yeah, like it happens that you start either with front end or with back end. You get more experience in those fields, and you get interested in other fields too. You want to learn in more depth. I don't know. I'm a front end. I want to learn more about back end. And then when I learn a decent amount of stuff there, I can call myself a full stack developer, and that would mean that I can create an application, obviously in both parts. So I can do everything alone, everything from databases, from backend, and all. I can create front end and communicate with that backend. So yeah, I would be able to create everything. Yeah, just to mention that both front end is really wide and complex. Backend is really wide and complex. So yeah, when you combine those two, that's just like a really wide field. But yeah, after some years of experience, it makes sense to learn it. You can like just build things by yourself. You don't need other people on other parts of the stack.
Definitely. Great answer. Do you guys have anything to add, Dweez, Ziad?
Ziad?
Yeah, I can go. I think it's important to also define like what stack means. I think Dom kind of like hinted at it a little bit, but essentially, like when you look at, like I keep going back to the app example. Like when you look at social medias or really any app that you have on your phone, like the stack of that app is like basically what languages it uses, what like different frameworks that developers use to actually build it. So like it could be like a stack of an application could be like JavaScript, Python, AWS, like all those different like things that were used to basically build that entire application. So when someone is known as like a full stack developer, that means they're able to use every single part of the stack. Like they can they can use Python, they can also use HTML, they can do front end, they can do back end. So that's essentially like why it's called full stack, is because you have like control over every single part of the app. But yeah, like Dom said, like a lot of people end up just going towards full stack anyways. Like it's kind of like the culture of software engineering now. I would say it's, I don't know if you guys agree with me this, but like it would be really hard to just be a front end developer like forever. Like at some point you need to interact with the back end a little bit and understand some of those concepts. And also it would be really hard to just be a back end developer like full time. But yeah, I think Louise, what do you think? Your last up.
No, I don't have anything to add, but for example, me myself, I never got to the point where you connect the back end and the front end. Could you guys maybe tell more about that? Like you guys are actually like you have done full stack development, so I think you can could you give an insight on that? I'm curious.
Yeah. Did you mainly do front end or mainly do
Yeah,
back?
I did mainly front end. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think Dom, you could probably answer this since you're primarily front end, but I'm sure you interact a little bit with back end.
Yeah, so I know some. I'm primarily front end, but I know some backend principles. And basically, how does it work? So you create a front end application. Let's again start with, I don't know, an Instagram clone, and you want to do a login, and for that you need to communicate with the backend. How does it go? With front-end, you first need to authenticate yourself. So you need to do login, and the server needs to know. Okay, this front-end is actually Dom. It's nobody else. It's Dom, and I can give Dom's data to Dom. How does it know that? Well, if you pass correct username and password, backend will know that, and then it will start providing you with that data. How does that work? It's a thing called API requests, and it works in a way that, for example, me Dom on my Instagram, actually my Instagram application, what it does in the background is that when I want to see items on my feed, I send an API request to the server and say to the server something like, hey, give me all the images that will be displayed on my feed, just in coding language, of course. And then server says, okay, here we go. And then frontend gets those images and usernames and just displays them on my feed. So that would be kind of like that in short. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, for sure. I was just curious how it like how it works. You just answered it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
There's some really good questions to be. It's really interesting just to hear everybody's like take on it, especially like experts versus people that maybe have just entered it. So this kind of leads into our next question. Also, for people that are watching, like if you guys have any questions that go off these, feel free to drop them in the chat. And I see we have a little bit of a bidding war or a gift war, if you say, going on between our creators here. So still fun to keep watching that. If you're enjoying their answers, feel free to send them something or just support with likes. But next question I have is, who are the people that usually choose front end, back end, or full stack? Like, are they usually creatives that do more so the front end? And for back end development, is it people that like are maybe more legit using back end for that type of program? Like, who wants to answer this question?
Maybe I can start, and
Sure.
guys can add something later. I would say that for front end, it's good that if you're a visual person, because you will be constantly developing something. For example, in your browser, your feature will be, I don't know, add a button somewhere, or create this table, or create this navigation item, show items in the table, or something like that. So it's good if you're a visual person, because you also need to convert those designs in correct applications. So you need to have a feeling that this should be aligned properly, this should be the right colors and everything. And if you're a visual person, that will give you satisfaction, because at the end of each task you will actually see like how something from nothing became literally, I don't know, a table or anything else you implement. So it's really satisfying. That's one of the reasons I like it a lot. I also like it because you can show it to everyone. So if you're a front end developer, you can create a beautiful application, for example, a beautiful website in a really short period of time, and you can send that website to everyone. If you're a backend developer, however, it's going to be a bit harder for you to create a nice application. And if you have some code on the backend, that code by itself is not that impressive to other people, if you understand what I say, because of course it has its purpose. It's here for security, for data, for optimizations, and it has its purposes, but it's just not it's backend. You can see it. So I would say that like yeah, logic is required both on front and back end for sure. But go to front, and if you're like a more visual person, if you are, I don't know, more into art, more creative, that's maybe like pushing it too hard. Like you don't need to be into art or creative. But yeah, if you're more a visual person, I would say front end.
Definitely.
Guys, do you have anything to add? Maybe for back end.
Yeah, no, for me, backend, it still is. It's abstract. That's the thing with it. It's exactly what Dom just said. If you are more visual, then just go with front end because especially if you're learning. I keep coming back to this. For me, it's important that I see what I'm doing. For backend, you have the code written, but you don't. It doesn't really visualize what it's doing. For front end, it's different. And yeah, I think if you are a more visual learner, it's easier for you to learn front end first.
Good answer. I know Ziad's popping in and out. Ziad, do you want to add on to this at all?
Yeah, I think like there's a lot of depth in back end, to be honest. Like in my experience, like it is definitely easier to get into front end like to begin with, and I feel like yeah, if you're like a visual person and you want like instant feedback on the code that you write, kind of like change the color of this button and see like how it looks, stuff like that, then definitely like front end is the way to go. But like recent years in like tech in general, I've seen a lot of like just general like innovations on the back end side of things, because there's like backend is a very like vague word. There's a lot of like, as kind of Dom said, there's you can talk about databases, you can talk about like different ways to structure APIs. Like there's so much like different fields in backend, and each one has like their own levels of depth. So definitely like if you're interested in like just how technology works in general, and like you're interested in like all the new innovations that are happening in tech, like I would say backend is definitely like a very exciting field. But I think in general, like you're gonna end up touching like everything anyway. So it's like if you really just want to get into tech to begin with, then front end is definitely a lot easier. But if you want to like eventually shift into just being like a technologist, then like learning backend as well is very useful, so you can stay like up to date with what's happening in tech. But just to add on to what Dom said, it's actually kind of like a running joke to an extent, where it's like front end developers always get like the credit for what they work on, because it's like really obvious to see what they did. Like for example, if like a new Instagram update comes out and like they changed like the design of Instagram, and like they changed all the colors and like the layout and stuff, like that's all front end work, and everybody would be like noticing it all the time. But a backend developer might make like the feed like zero point 0.2 seconds faster or something, and that'll be like such a huge change for a backend developer, but then, like you wouldn't notice it really as like a user, and it's just like kind of a joke of like backend developers never get any credit or anything like that. So yeah.
Definitely. Great answers, you guys. Cool. That's so funny. Amazing. Perfect. Okay. Sorry, just lost my train of thought there for a second. Back into this. Great answers. Again, have a little bit of a war going on over here, so it's amazing to support our creators here. We do have a question in the chat, but I'm gonna get to that in a moment because I want to know how, like, what are the steps to get into front end, back end, and full stack? Like, what are your steps to get into that career path? Like, how do you even start? Louise, let's start with you.
You need to learn to get into front end development. I think you need to first learn a markup language, that's HTML for most people, and a styling language, that's CSS. Earlier, whoa, I pressed something on accident here. Yeah. Um, After that, you can learn a programming language. Most people learn JavaScript, but there's many different ways you can go about it. JavaScript is the most popular one in the tech industry for jobs and tech interviews and companies. A lot of them look for JavaScript, so it's a safe language to learn. I think the reason why it's so popular is because of React as well. If you're going to learn React, please don't skip JavaScript. Like, I see people commenting in the comment section saying, yeah, I learned React before I learned JavaScript. Don't do that. Just take the long path, learn everything, and it will just be easier for you. Yeah, I think those are languages that you can learn. After that, you need to pass a technical interview and so on. Ziad has a lot of experience with that, so he can explain you more about that. Tom as well. Yeah, that's about it.
Cool. Let's jump to Ziad next. How do you work with that answer?
Yeah, I think yeah, Dweez definitely gave some very good advice there. I think like starting with the HTML, the CSS, and then JavaScript is almost exactly like what I did to get started. I think the jump that I did from there to also learn a little bit of like backend, because backend is a little tougher to like get started with in a sense, is I just started building like side projects with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And what I noticed is that like a lot of the things that I was doing like required some sort of knowledge of backend. Like I would come up with like just a random idea that I wanted to code on my own, not like a huge app or website or anything, but just like something for fun and to also like learn from. Like for example, a lot of people start with like a weather app where you could just like look up a city and it'll tell you the weather. And it's like such a simple side project, but it'll like require you to like understand what's an API and like how do I get data or whatever. And it kind of forces you into like googling things and understanding like how front end and back end kind of work together. So I think building side projects after you learn the fundamentals is really important for like knowing what you don't know and going from there. And yeah, I think like that's a pretty solid foundation. Just build a lot of side projects on the after you learn fundamentals. But yeah, Dom, what do you think?
Yeah, I would. I completely agree with both of you. I think the easiest way to get into development is start with front end and everything that guys said, like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then finally React. It's easy because um, companies are actually looking for a lot of front end jobs. It's really necessary on the market. It's when you get inside, it's easier to move into backend. So especially like if you learn JavaScript, you can use JavaScript on the backend too, as well as the front end. So on backend it's Node, so you can easily make that progress. And I would also say that why companies tend to hire less experienced front end engineers more often, because if you do a mistake on front end, it's not that terrible because something I don't know, either wrong information will be displayed, or I don't know, button will be wrong color, or something will be broken in front end, but it's not that terrible because even if you display wrong information, that information is still correct on the backend. So it's just like you didn't actually compromise the data. However, if you do a big mistake on backend, that can have huge consequences. Because imagine, I don't know, that you are working with payment systems, and instead of $100, you charge $1,000. If you do that on the front end and just display 1,000 instead of 100, but at the end you will still charge 100, it's not such a huge deal. Or people will report it and you will fix it, and it's not such a huge deal. But imagine that on backend, and you actually charge 1,000 instead of 100 to people. It's a huge problem, and especially if you mess up user data in databases and everything. There are of course ways to fix that, but consequences can be terrible and immediate. Not that they cannot be on front end. Sure, they can, but I would say that it's more risky to work on backend than on front end.
Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah, that would be pretty bad if you ended up charging somebody $1,000 instead of a great life, and shows people like, okay, what are the errors? Like if you make one, that's how it's gonna go. I see that Ziad in the answer one of the questions, which was, I don't know if you say it or if you spell it, but MERN versus mean.
yeah, it's you say like MERN, like I don't know. I've actually heard it both ways, I guess, but essentially, like it's just an acronym. So like when I explained earlier that a stack is like what an app is built with, MERN is like a popular stack, and it stands for MongoDB. E, I think, is Express, right, Dom? Yeah, Express. R is React, and N is Node.js. So essentially, what that's saying is like for your database, you're going to use this like popular one called MongoDB. For a lot of your APIs and like your backend, basically, you'd be using something called Express and Node.js. And then React is like what you're building the front end with. That's personally like one of my favorite stacks to use when I'm like just building side projects in general. The mean stack that he mentioned is pretty much the same thing, except the A is Angular instead of React. And so the main difference here is like what the front end is built using. I personally think MERN is superior. I don't like Angular that much. I've like used it a few times, and it's weird. So basically, like React is like they're both front end frameworks technically, and Angular was this like framework that was built by Google, and it has a lot of like core functionality kind of built in. But yeah, exactly, Louise. Don't be mean. Like, just be MERN. Yeah, I think React has like a much bigger like developer community in general. Like a lot of people use it, so a lot of like issues that you'll run into can just be Googled online for the most part. Angular is a little more has a lot of like built-in functionality, so I don't think it's like as customizable when you're building front-end stuff. But that's just like personal preference. Like I like React a little bit more, but that might be biased because it's like what I learned first for the most part. What do you guys think? Do you guys know Angular or have you used it before? No.
Yeah, I haven't used Angular before, so it's a bit hard for me
Yeah.
to tell about it. But yeah, basically this is a question, React or Angular. If we completely ignore implementation details of both frameworks, React is actually, they are different because Angular is a framework. React is just a library. That means that with React, you'll have to use many other tools to make it work properly. You will need to use other tools for routing, for store, for everything else. Angular, however, it's a complete framework and has everything, has all those features that you'll need to add, to React. So that's like a bigger, and Angular has its own set of guidelines how to create something, which can be a benefit because you don't have to like do it on your own, but it can also be a constraint. But if you're starting, I highly suggest React just because you'll get the job much easier because there are so many React jobs on the market, and there are not there are Angular jobs on the market. That's for sure. But I don't think I see junior Angular positions that often. I would say that usually more experienced developers work with Angular because some like pretty massive applications are created by Angular just because of that stability. If you don't know what you're doing and you pick up React and you need to build a massive application, you can mess things up. With Angular, you can mess it, of course. You can always mess everything in software engineering, but chances are for messing up are a bit lower just because everything is predefined. You have opinions there. But yeah, if you're just starting, definitely React. Community is stronger. You'll get the job easier, and it's probably gonna be more fun because it's all in JavaScript.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And just to finish off the question, that is 6 months enough to master it? I think 6 months is definitely like enough to like learn it and like understand the basic fundamentals and like the concepts, and you'll understand it well enough to be able to build things. But I think like mastering like a stack or just mastering a language in general, like I've been using React for like years now, and I'm still learning things like every day, and I still have to Google things. And I know a lot of like senior developers who have been like working for 10 or more years with like just JavaScript, for example, and they still don't know like everything. And that's mainly because like first of all, there's so much to like learn and to master, I guess. The second reason is there's like things that are always coming out anyways. Like there's new versions of libraries, there's new versions of JavaScript that have evolved over the years, and some of these frameworks haven't even like been out for like more than a decade or two. So for the most part, I don't know if you can like say master it in 6 months, but definitely well enough to be able to like build things and have a lot of confidence in what you're building.
Yeah, just to add on that, don't be bothered with mastering frameworks, languages, because the field is just so massive that you need to accept that you won't know things. I've been coding for like 7 years, and there are still many things. Even with JavaScript, so I'm senior front-end engineer, I still don't know some things in JavaScript that are like a bit too complex for me to understand. Of course, I use them all the time, and uh, I I probably even know how to explain them, but don't I can't say that that I master them just because they're like so complex. But that doesn't mean anything. Just work in any pace that you want. Focus on the things that are going well. If you don't understand things, don't spend like days trying to understand them, because you probably won't. Just try to understand the concepts. If you cannot, you will still be able to use those things even if you don't understand them. And then when you revisit the same topic in a year, I don't know, for example, JavaScript with promises, that concept took me so long to properly understand. Probably I don't understand them properly now. But yeah, that's such a complex topic that I don't know, if you check it again every 6 months, you will have better understanding of it. But still, probably not that mastery perfection. You can try to reach it, but just enjoy the whole journey. Don't be happy only when you will know everything about JavaScript or any other language.
Yeah.
Awesome. Those are really great answers. I see we have another one in the chat, and I'm gonna direct it to Dweez if you know. So the question is, where can I learn CSS?
Where can I learn CSS? I mean, if you want to get into it, I always, if someone doesn't have experience with programming, or I just always recommend Free Code Camp, because this is what Free Code Camp does. It basically, I think it you can learn fully how to program on Free Code Camp, but I think it's also a nice environment to just get into it. So yeah, check out Free Code Camp. They have nice. I checked out the CSS course there. It's a nice course. You should check it out. See if yeah, if you have difficulties with it. For me, CSS is difficult for me, but the flex box, I keep going back to this. but how to center a div. But I think, yeah, check out the free code campus site, their CSS course.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And guys, do you have any other suggestions on like where you can learn to code or where you can learn CSS, for example? I know that was a specific question, but like code in general. Zia, Dom?
Yeah, I think CSS is one of those things that it's also like CSS is so huge and there's like so many different things that you can learn. So it's like I'm still learning to this day like how to do certain things. Although if you want to know, CSS is like how you style things in general. So if you want to like make things certain colors or like add animations and stuff like that, that's the language that's used to do that. So you can imagine like it's like learning Photoshop, for example. Like you're never gonna like know 100% of Photoshop. You're still probably gonna like search things online and understand like the good standards and stuff like that. I personally learned like fundamental CSS, just like Dewey said. I learned on Code Academy, I think it was at the time. So online courses are really helpful in just teaching you like very bare bones fundamentals. But then the number one thing is like practice, practice, practice. Like build things on your own. Like make sure you get like hands-on experience with using some of these languages. Yeah.
Definitely. Dom, do you have anything to add to this?
Well, guys said almost everything, but just for CSS, I would say because it's just yeah, it's a bunch of different properties with I would say it's a bit different than I don't know JavaScript, because with JavaScript you have like you progressively going deeper and deeper and deeper. With CSS it's kind of like different. You have to learn all those properties, but some of them are not so complex. A bit hard to explain that. And I would suggest for CSS definitely get some course or roadmap how to learn it, because if you just randomly start using properties, you won't know why is something good. Is it something good? Is there a better way? Probably is. You will just make everything look fine on your desktop, but when you move it to mobile, it will look bad. So you can make it work probably when you develop it on your machine, and you will set fixed widths, and you will do like not that great things. So that's why I need kind of structure a roadmap or a course just to have that all knowledge complete.
Yeah.
Can I jump into this?
Yeah.
If you want a roadmap, there's like this web page, roadmap.sh. They have roadmaps for CSS. Someone asked if it's nice. I think it is. It's definitely it just has a roadmap if for those who are interested.
Yeah, yeah, and even Dom has a couple awesome TikToks on this account where he goes like and does cool things with CSS. So if you're interested in the cool side of CSS, I definitely give our account a check
Yeah.
out. Dom specifically has some awesome videos when it comes to that.
Definitely. It sounds like we need to make some more videos of Warren versus me comments here.
Yeah.
But us, we do a lot of content based around like the questions that are being asked. And we're always open to new ideas and like what to talk about. So feel free to drop some ideas. Dom, I heard that you wanted to answer one of the questions in the chat. What is the downside of using Bootstrap?
Yep. Somebody asked about downsides of using Bootstrap. So what is a Bootstrap? It's a CSS framework, or it can be a component library if you use it, for example, in React, and that means that you want to style something, but not by using pure CSS, just by using Bootstrap Bootstrap rules. So, for example, if you want to set padding with CSS, you will just padding top, for example, you will just write padding top and set it to, I don't know, 8 pixels. However, if you want to do the same thing with Bootstrap, you need to set a specific class on the element and use Bootstrap's shortcuts. I don't know, I think like PT-2 to do the same thing. And that's kind of like a big downside for me, because Bootstrap is just one framework. And you will learn Bootstrap, and you will become good at Bootstrap, but then it's possible that Bootstrap updates to a new major version, and there are many breaking changes. And suddenly, PT minus 2 is not padding top anymore. You need to use something else to set padding top. And then you need to change everything in your application. You need to relearn everything, and you're not learning the core thing properly. You're not learning CSS. If you know CSS, and you should definitely start learning CSS before jumping to Bootstrap, Tailwind, or any of other CSS frameworks. If you know core CSS, then you can easily understand Bootstrap, Tailwind, and all the other solutions. However, if you know only Bootstrap and you start with Bootstrap and you master Bootstrap, uh, then you will just get to another company. They will use, I don't know, Beautify. They will use, I mean, Beautify is a component library, but kind of combined with that. Or they will use Tailwind. And you'll just have to learn all the other things from Tailwind. But you won't learn properly that core CSS. So that's kind of like one downside, that knowledge transfer. So I definitely suggest learning core CSS, and the benefits are it is sometimes faster to develop with it. You don't need to develop everything from scratch, but that can also be a limiting factor because you have those predefined classes, predefined styles, and sometimes it's hard to break them. Sometimes you need to hack the application just to escape those styles. Many people still use it just because it's way faster, and probably if you don't have super experienced engineers who know CSS properly, then it makes sense to use Bootstrap. I would suggest Tailwind because Tailwind is just like a better Bootstrap. I'm really not a fan. I'm really not a fan of Bootstrap, so yeah, go with Tailwind, but make sure to learn core CSS.
Awesome. Great answer. We're going to jump into our last question here because we're running a little time. But feel free to drop any more questions in the chat and make sure you give us a follow because we do this every Wednesday at 12:30. And we make sure to follow some questions up from the last live. So my last question for you guys is we're getting a lot of questions about jobs at the job market in tech. So I want to ask, and whoever wants to jump in first, maybe I'll start with Ziad or Dweez this time, is where are some places that you can get real world experience to put on your application to get a job?
That's a tough question. I think I could start.
Sure.
So yeah, like real world experience for me, as I stated earlier, was like building side projects, and it started out with just like me just building things like by myself and coming up with ideas and seeing if I could build them. But at the time, like I was kind of like early college, so like I knew a lot of people that were also kind of interested in computer science or in development or whatnot. So what I ended up doing is just like gathering a few friends and like really getting them together to like build something bigger, and it was just for the fact that we wanted to have some real world experience, like to put on our resumes, like to be able to do jobs in the future. We ended up just like building apps together, building random websites that we thought were cool, and like when you have a bunch of people working together on a software engineering project, we start to think about different things like like how we're gonna like manage our code and how we're gonna like what technologies are we gonna use and how we're gonna communicate, and it really gets you like prepared for what it's like to work at an actual company. Something else we did is like attend hackathons. I don't know if you guys have done them in the past, but they've been like really useful to me. And there's tons of like remote hackathons now that you can just go online and join. I think a really good website is I think it's called DevPost, and devpost.com or org or something. Like they host like a lot of virtual hackathons, and sometimes there's even like awards at the end and stuff, which is really cool. And basically, like if you don't know what a hackathon is, but you just go in and they'll give you like a theme or something, and you'll have like 24 to 48 hours to just like code it, and usually it's like with a group or something like that. And honestly, like doing those really helped me to get a feel for what it's like to actually build something like big and be able to take that into like real world experience and also learn like communication skills when it comes to software engineering. Like how do you talk about code with other people, and how do you, like I said earlier, like manage code when a bunch of people are working on it. It's like doing a group project in like high school and stuff. Like you have to just know like basic skills to be able to, get together and build something. And then the obvious thing is just like applying to internships once you're ready for them. Like those number one real world experience is, actually going out and getting real world experience. And lots of companies have like internship programs. And even if a company like doesn't have a formal internship program, like I have a lot of friends that just reached out to like small local businesses in the area and like offered to build them a website or like, something similar to that. And that was considered like their real world experience. So then they could actually take that to like companies in the future and say like, hey, like I know how to be a developer. Look what I did for this small business or something, or like look at this website that I made in a hackathon. And usually that's like a very good indicator that first of all, like you actually know how to be like a software engineer, but also that like you're proactive and you try to like go out and seek opportunities and stuff like that. So if I would say it, three things, it's like hackathons, internships, and side projects.
Right on. That's very specific and very clear. I hope our followers are getting writing their notepads down for what they can do to get some more experience. Dweez, do you have anything to add to that?
No, not really. I think Ziad really hit it on the head.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tom?
Ziad said, I think
Yeah.
he said everything. Yeah, so definitely. Like maybe a topic to discuss would be those internships. Like, should you accept unpaid internship or unpaid internships, or go just to paid? I would say for that topic, if you can afford it and if you can just do an unpaid internship, definitely go, because you will get that real world experience that will truly matter to people on your future job. It will truly matter to your future employer. So definitely do it and try to get any sort of internship. However, if you can't afford it, and if you'll have to work like a separate job just to be able to survive in that period and work like a separate job plus unpaid internship, then maybe it makes a bit more sense to try to get that paid internship, because there are many opportunities. And as the ad said, like just randomly start asking companies, do they need some developers, do they need some help, that you can help them, even for free. I've said, if you can afford it. But yeah, I don't have anything too smart to add, because the ad literally nailed it. So yeah, great,
Yeah, maybe we should have
great.
a live about this topic. I feel like we can definitely go deeper, about a lot of these subjects. So.
I definitely agree. Like something about jobs. Amazing. Okay, well, I think we're out of time here, so I want to thank everybody for joining our live. Feel free to follow our account because we do this again every Wednesday at 12:30 EST, and we try to answer as many questions as possible. I see there's a couple we didn't answer, so we'll write them down and we'll make sure to answer them next time. But give us a follow, and thank you so much for all the gifts for our creators. I'm sure they're very appreciative of them. Creators, do you have anything else you want to add before we skip out of here for the day?
Yeah, I definitely appreciate everyone tuning in. I like loved answering some of these questions. They definitely made me think. Yeah.
Yep. Thanks everyone for joining, and thanks for all the questions, attentions, and yeah, we'll be here in a week.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, and see you next week.
Perfect. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much. Bye.
Cheers.